Hi there. I'm so glad you're here. Here's what you'll gain by listening to the very last second of this conversation with the one and only Jim Knight. Through my conversation with Jim, you'll learn about why effective instructional coaching is built on 7 essential success factors that create conditions for both teachers and students to flourish. These are centered on authentic partnerships where coaches support teacher autonomy while maintaining a clear focus on improving student outcomes. You'll leave the conversation understanding why partnership is the foundation of effective coaching, why coaching must be focused on student outcomes, and why systemic support is essential but often imperfect. Stay with us. I'm so happy to have you join our conversation today. This is Solutions Coaching and Teaching Strategies, the podcast that extends education beyond the classroom. A show that offers educators and caregivers strategies to try right away and ensure every student receives the inspiration and support they need to thrive. I am Olivia Wall, and I am in disbelief that I am able to be in conversation with the one and only Jim Knight. Jim Knight's book, Instructional Coaching, it came out in 2007. It has been a beacon for me over all of the years that I've been coaching and outside of the classroom, having my own classroom. And the neat fact about that book is that it offered the first extended description of instructional coaching. As the founder of the Instructional Coaching Group, Jim leads the Intensive Instructional Coaching Institute, hosts the popular Coaching Conversations podcast, and created the world's leading conference for instructional coaching. Our conversation today will focus on 7 factors for successful instructional coaching based on Jim's book. I have it right here. It is fantastic. The Definitive Guide to Instructional Coaching, 7 Factors for Success. Jim, welcome. I am honored to have you as a guest today.
I'm honored to be here and grateful for the chance to talk about it. So are you an art person? Do you like art?
I do.
So Rothko inspired that cover.
I
I mean, it doesn't really look like a Rothko work of art because he says his covers are like a window into the infinite is what he started that I read in one gallery. But there is a Rothko painting that kind of inspired that. So that's how we justify it. We say we're just trying to be like Mark Rothko. That's what we're trying to do.
Well, the other layer that I continue to circle back is so many coaches just want to be like you, Jim. And so, I've chatted actually before this conversation with all different colleagues. And it feels more like a 201, not a 101 when it comes to the 7 success factors, because the way that I've framed the questions, I've spoken to coaches that have said, okay, yes, we understand these 7 success factors, but what if, but what if, but what if, and they knew that I had the gift of speaking with you. So that's how I framed these questions. And the most important thing that I want folks to get out of this conversation is what has to be in place for coaches to flourish. So we're going to jump in. Before we do, what nugget of research or what researcher have you been leaning on more than others lately?
Well, lately I've been working a lot with Brian Goodwin, who wrote the book New Classroom Instruction That Works. And he and I have met a few times. We met just March 11th, so a little while ago. And so I've been trying to figure out what would instructional coaching for the new classroom instruction book look like. And we're getting close to having our draft of a book done around instructional coaching for the new classroom instruction that works. And Marzano's book was so influential, and now we have this revised version. So it's really exciting to be a part of it. He's been the research drive I've done. We have a thing at our conference called the Don Deschler Leadership Award, and every year we highlight someone that we say we wouldn't be who we are if it wasn't for those people. So people like, well, Don Deschler first, but then Michael Fullen, Joellen Killian, Parker Palmer was one of the award winners. Last year, it was Art Costa and Bob Garmson. The year before that, Zaretta Hammond. All those people are people that they're the giants whose shoulders we stand on. So
yes,
a lot of people have been behind what we've done.
Yes, they have. I am being very bold in asking. And, the preface for this book really sets the tone. And I was hoping I could read a quote from the preface. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, sure. You could
All right.
do whatever you like.
Thanks. That's wonderful. Here we go. Coaching is essential for the kind of growth we need to see in schools. Real learning occurs in real life when people work hard to solve real life challenges. Workshops, books, and webinars can provide us with an overview of ideas, but we only adopt and internalize these ideas when we apply them to our professional practice. That kind of real life learning requires goals that matter deeply to us and to our students, both because they're based on a clear understanding of reality and because we have chosen them for ourselves. I think that's a good opener for us. So, can you name the 7 success factors, and then we'll break them down through questions?
Sure. I better be able to. I've been talking about them for years, and it's the book. The success factors are the result of 25 years of research. So I spent close to a decade every day in schools in Topeka, Kansas. Before that, we worked with the Lawrence, Kansas schools. Then we had a research partnership with Beaverton, Oregon for 3 years. And then after that, another 3 years with Othello, Washington. We had different kinds of funding to continuously refine our coaching. And then we've continued to do research in different ways. I've got a group I'm going to meet later today where we're applying Brian Goodwin's research using the impact cycle. So and it's partly reading the literature. What does the literature have to tell us? Whether it's about goal setting or describing strategies or whatever it might be, relationships, and then trying things out and making modifications, making a lot of mistakes. And so I would say in many ways, the 7 success factors are a record of the things we've learned after making a lot of mistakes. And so to pay attention to them, I think, is a way of reducing the likelihood that you'll face those mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of organized in 3 categories. So the first category is who I am, and that's the beliefs I have. What are the beliefs, the assumptions that guide my work? How do I communicate? And what are my coaching skills? And then the third thing is how do I lead? How do I lead myself to get clear on my purpose and organize my life to be consistent with that purpose? And then how do I lead others? So I'm a multiplier, not a diminisher. And so I balance ambition with humility. So the first thing, who I am, it's really it's really the partnership approach to working with people.
Yes.
Second part, what I do. The second, if it's a Venn diagram, one part is my beliefs, my communication skills, my leadership. The second Venn diagram is what I do. And so what I do is, first off, I have a coaching cycle I use, and we talk about the impact cycle. And we spent 10 years pretty systematically refining that cycle through a process I call lean design research to try to come up with the most efficient way to move things forward.
Yeah.
And then to make that cycle work, you need data and you need strategies to help you hit the goal once you use data to establish the goal. Data helps you see where you are. It helps you describe where you want to get to, and it helps you monitor the progress if it's working or not. And then strategies take you there, the teaching strategies. So the what I do part is the coaching cycle, data, and strategies. And then the third cycle that kind of surrounds those 2 circles is where I work, that the system gives me enough time to do my work. There's theoretical alignment across the system, a policy around confidentiality. There's role clarity, so I know what I'm doing. There's connections within the system, so ideas get shared really quickly. If you got a coach in every school, you can if one coach sees something really cool in a classroom, if you have coaches in every school, you should be able to spread that across the school almost simultaneously. So, but it's pretty hard, even if you had all 6 of the first success factors, it's pretty hard to flourish if the system doesn't support you. So system support would be the 7th one. And I would say those are must-haves, not nice to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be hard to be an effective coach if you can't listen and question effectively. It's going to be hard to be an effective coach if you can't set goals or you don't have strategies to help you hit the goals. And it's going to be hard to be an effective coach if you're doing so many non-coaching things, you never get to do coaching. So those 3 things, who I am, what I do, where I work, they articulate, I would say, 7 must-haves for coaches.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to the system, we're actually going to end with that in our conversation, but it really does have to be there. And I have served many different school districts with many layers of support systemically. But as you said, if it's not in place and everyone is not in the communication or shared understanding about the roles, about what is and is in coaching isn't, then it's just an uphill battle, it feels like.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It's uphill. I think it's still possible to succeed. Nothing's ever perfect, but it's a lot easier when you're working in alignment with each other and everybody has an understanding of what you're doing, and there's alignment in your beliefs, and there's support for the coach to do what they need to do and the growth of the coach. So
Yeah.
when we all work together, it's a lot more effective. You can still succeed. It's just a lot easier when you and the principal are partners.
Well, and I think it just doesn't allow for the full potential, would
Right.
be another way of saying it, the idea of pollination. So let's talk partnership, because again, I have worked with coaches that really want to have authentic, true partnerships with the teachers that they're coaching. And yet sometimes administration wants them to focus on other practices outside of that, what the teacher needs, or what the coach wants to focus on with the teacher. So how do we get around that?
Well, I'm always nervous about putting a Band-Aid on a problem. And so I think if there isn't widespread understanding of what coaches do and why they do what they do, and is shared, then you need to deal with that problem. Not saying, let's pretend that the root problem isn't dealt with.
Isn't
So I
there?
think you want to set the system up for success. We've got a book called Evaluating Instructional Coaching. We've got rubrics for the 7 success factors. Now, it might be different what you do, but you need to have a shared understanding of what the coaching is going to be. And then you need to evaluate the coaches and evaluate the program using those standards. And so ours are built around the 7 success factors. We talk about the success factors, the success criteria, the rubrics for assessment, and whether it's that or something else. Too often, coaches are evaluated. It's someone who doesn't really understand coaching using the tool developed for teachers. It's not really that helpful. So
Right.
to have that assessments in place, I think to have a shared understanding up front is important. But I think that idea of partnership is not understood very well. So maybe I could just say a couple things about that. So
Sure.
we talk about facilitative, dialogical, and directive conversations.
Yeah.
It's like fancy words, but it's simpler to say partnering and telling. And so then we distinguish between those 3 different types of conversations with 2 criteria: choice and sharing. And so when I take a facilitative approach to coaching, and things like the European Mentoring and Coaching Council and the International Coaching Federation, a lot of their coaching, the coaches don't share ideas. They set their expertise aside because they say this person knows everything they need to do to solve their problem. If I was to share my ideas, it would be disempowering, or it would just get in the way. I'm going to ask good questions. I'm going to listen, but I'm not going to share my ideas. And I think you can start in the facilitative world by asking a question like, you've probably thought a lot about this. What are you thinking you might do? And just opening up the conversation. Because often they've got great ideas. More often than not, they have great. But if it becomes clear that they don't have the knowledge they need to succeed, and you as an expert have the knowledge, we would say a coach needs to be, they have expertise, but they don't act like experts. Then you move into the dialogical approach. And so the dialogical approach, facilitative approach is, you have choice in what you do. You're the decision maker, but I set my knowledge aside. I don't share. The dialogical approach is, you still have choice, but now I share ideas, but I share it in a way that I'm not telling you what to do. I just say, let me share this idea and tell me what you think. And the thing is, no one does anything unless they choose to do it. So the dialogical approach is just saying, it's okay to tell me what you think. You're safe here. Don't pretend you're going to do something and go off and do that. Let's talk.
Right.
And then you have a much greater chance of having an impact when you take the dialogical approach, where you share ideas and the person has choice. The telling approach is, I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to share ideas, and you don't have a choice. So if the principal said to a teacher, you're getting into school just before the bell goes, you need to get in half an hour earlier at least. You need to be here. You need to be here before the kids get here. The principal is probably not going to be okay with the teacher saying, I don't think I want to do that. That's a telling conversation. This is something
Right.
you have to do. And for us, coaching is partnering. That's facilitative and dialogical. Telling is necessary. Sometimes you have to communicate a message and it has to come through clearly. And you can shift between those different things. But the thing that I would say, and I studied this for my dissertation, is when you take the partnering approach, there's a much greater likelihood the person will embrace the ideas.
Yes.
When I did my dissertation studying this, we did 2 different workshops, one that was directive and one that was a partnering one. People were 4.5 times more likely to take the thing, to plan to implement the thing they learned from the partnership approach than the other approach. So when you recognize people are going to make a choice, they're way more effective. So I think a big part of making this work is we want leaders to understand that it's not soft to treat teachers like professionals. It's the fastest way to make change happen.
Absolutely. And I would say too, I think one of the best things that ever happened to me before I had children was being a coach, because I also see caregiving and being a parent with facilitative and dialogical. Like, you're going to get so much more commitment from children as well. And so thinking of, if this is the type of partnership that coaches and teachers are modeling in front of children, how beautiful for them to also see that there's some choice and voice for them. What communication, let's shift then to communication, because so much of this is about communication. What communication pitfalls do you see coaches running into still with that facilitative and dialogic stance?
Yeah, we keep trying to decide, is it dialogic or dialogical? I'm writing this book with Christian Van Nuremberg on that very topic, and we're like, is it dialogic or dialogical? So I don't know. You might be casting the final vote here, Olivia, that we'll go with dialogic. He's going dialogic. I'm going dialogical. I think there are skills to coaching the way there are skills to anything you might do. A surgeon, for example, learns how to hold the scalpel.
Yeah.
And she knows that she moves this way or does this, and she learns how to read what's happening during surgery. And the skills of coaching are the way you listen, the way you ask questions, the way you share ideas dialogically, where you share ideas precisely, but the other person's the decision maker. The way you don't give advice. You might share ideas, but you don't try to control what the other person does. You don't take away choice. And advice is saying, this is what I think you should do.
Yeah.
And then, and so I'd say, I don't know if there's any one thing, but I think, scrutinizing video of your coaching conversations, watching the other person, analyzing. You can get a little free app for chess where you hit the button to see how much you talk and how much the other person talks, to see how much you've been talking. You can use AI to analyze it too. But I think, the heart of the matter is appreciating the other person, noticing the other person, but the heart of the matter is listening and questioning and explaining things dialogically. And it doesn't come naturally. We really want to tell we have the perfect solution. I know I'm not supposed to give advice, but in this one case, I think it's really, really important. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. Part of it is just our impulse for certainty. But I think coaches, just like a bunch of kids learning how to play hockey, they have to learn how to skate. They have to learn how to stick handle. They have to learn how to skate backwards, how to pass the puck, how to raise the puck. Coaches have to learn those skills to where they're second nature. And video is probably the quickest way to do that. I mean, they can practice with colleagues, but video recording your coaching conversations and watching the collaborating teacher as much as you watch yourself is really powerful.
I have been lately facilitating coaching labs, but we've been keeping it to triads, and it's been so powerful to have two coaches together. One that is trying to work with the teacher or a group of teachers through an event that we've planned, and then have the colleague, the other coach, be taking voluminous notes of what is happening, see, heard, and it's been really interesting. I also had the gift of speaking with Hae-Sun Moon, and what she uplifted for me in conversation was, you have to be really careful with your questions as well. And so I think something as a coach that I'm refining, and I learned long ago, Don't ask questions that you already know the answer to, because that will lean right to telling, right to fixing. But even more than that, acknowledge and listen to the person that is sharing. And if they are saying something that doesn't feel good or that's not working well, there's a way to notice that, to hear it, to see it. And then I adore that she says, well, then what did you do? That sounds really, really hard. What did you do when you were working to solve that? And it immediately shifts and helps that person see, whoa, I have navigated that. So I think it's fascinating. Something else I know that's a struggle when it comes to leadership, because that's another success factor. How can coaches hone their approach with leadership, but keep it separate than the school leaders, or different? How is it different?
Well, I would say that the coach is a peer. They're not an administrator.
Yeah.
But teachers are leaders. Paraprofessionals can be leaders. And so I would say coaches are leaders in the sense that, do you know Harry Potter? That idea of there's that character, Mad Eye Moody, I think his name is, and he's got his eyes going in two directions at
Yes.
the same time.
Yeah.
Where a coach kind of has to be like that. But I think teachers should be too. They're looking at this particular classroom and this particular teacher and her students or his students, and they're looking at the system and they're saying, how do I affect the system? How do I make it change? But I would say, when I'm coaching a teacher, it should feel like a teacher talking with a teacher. It shouldn't feel any different. That's how I would see it. I mean, coaches tend to be highly emotionally intelligent. I've seen, I don't know, maybe 100,000 coaches now,
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of coaches. They tend to be really, I mean, we're blessed to be working with coaches because they're such a great audience, but they tend to be real learners.
Yeah.
And, and so in many ways I mean, part of what you're doing in an organization is creating a culture. And if they're aware of the values of the culture, they can embody those. They can sort of walk the talk around culture and the system
Right.
too. But I would want everybody in the organization to say what we're trying to do in creating culture, is creating the place where we want to work, where we feel
Yes.
psychologically safe and supported and appreciated. And so I think when you look at culture, everybody's creating it, and they're creating it just the way any other teacher in the school would be creating.
Yeah. I think too, the idea of professional capital is something that's near and dear to my heart. So as I'm working with different schools and systems, I'm thinking of the human, social, and then the decisional. And I think that the best systems, often it's that their decisional capital is so on point because they know the skills, the knowledge, the talents. They know the relationships and in between the teachers and the colleagues. So I think that when it comes to leadership, I appreciate that you just acknowledge it's not just the administrators in the building who are leaders. Everyone, when we use that term leadership, can be a leader within the school, the children as well. So I think that that's amazing.
Yeah,
And
I just want to add one. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah, no, go ahead.
I got to work on my not interrupting skills, but I would add one thing is that I feel the coach's job in some ways is to create the conditions for others to flourish.
Yeah.
And I feel that's the job of any leader in a system, is to create conditions where other people can flourish, teachers and students. So
Yes.
to me, that's a pretty parallel position.
Yeah, I agree. Um, and then I'm thinking of the coaching process, and I'd love for you to speak to the flexibility that can be possible with the impact cycle for a coach, depending on the different teachers that they're working with.
To me, the measure of success is changes in powerful changes in student outcomes.
Yeah.
So it could be achievement, or it could be engagement, or it could be well-being. But to my mind, if nothing's changed for kids, then the coaching hasn't been successful. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Purpose of coaching is, our sort of motto is excellent instruction for every student, every day, in every class, everywhere. And so everything's about that. It's about how can we do. Now, you're not likely going to achieve that goal without something that's uh, increases the efficacy of the teachers themselves as well. But
Right.
I don't think you can bully people into better schools. It happens through appreciation and seeing the good in the other person and communicating it. And it happens through growth and develop. Um, so I would say that first off. And the second thing I would say is we made a lot of mistakes developing the impact cycle. We spent 10 years developing it. And so I think before you go to radically changing things, I'd want to try it out first and see. I'll give you a little example. We found it's really important for teachers to get a clear picture of reality. It takes extra time. That's probably another week in the cycle. I just did a podcast a few weeks ago with someone who did her dissertation on the impact cycle. She said it's night and day what happens when teachers watch themselves on video and when they don't. That may not be video, but to get a clear. So if you skip that without having had the experience, you won't know what you've missed. So I think
Right.
getting a pretty clear sense of what the cycle is and what it entails, but is really important. And it is an adaptive model. The teacher picks the goal. The teacher talks about how they want to learn the strategy. It's not going to work when you first try it out. Most likely, you're going to have to make modifications and changes in the improvement cycle. So it's an agile, adaptive model. It's not technocratic. It's adaptive. But I think if you hit the goal, you succeeded. And do I work with one teacher or two teachers? Well, if they both really care about the goal, working together is great. If one doesn't care about the goal, well, it's probably not going to be very successful. And there's different ways of trying things and adjusting. And, you talked about the book Instructional Coaching. Pretty much everything except the partnership principles in that book has changed. And so we're not done learning about the impact cycle. People could definitely refine it and improve it. We should always be getting better, more efficient, faster. And the other thing I would say is it's never really going to go exactly the way it's supposed to go. There's going to be
Right.
something happen. Like today, there was electricity was out in one of the schools of one of the coaches that we're going to talk to on Friday. There's always something comes up and
Yeah.
somebody gets sick, so it never goes exactly the way you want. You do your best, but the structure, the closer you are to the structure, I think, and not to be technocratic about it. You have to make it you're going to pick your own questions, over time, it's going to be something you just do naturally, like breathing almost. But I think I wouldn't want to cut a whole bunch of things out without without trying them and seeing if they work. That's the way I'd put it.
Yeah, I think something that's been so helpful, that idea of being in reality together and reflecting on that. Something I've started to do, whether I'm coaching a teacher or coaching coaches, a week before I'm setting foot in that building, I've been sending a Google Doc to all of the teachers I'll be in cycles with, and we're calling it Sparks, based on Carrie Fansler's responsive coaching cycle. And there are 5 different buckets of sparks. It can be something that a student is struggling with or a teacher is struggling with that you want to study, a practice you want to incorporate. So 5 different buckets. And what's been interesting is the teachers are all typing into the same Google Doc. I noticed that they'll see a colleague say something like, "Oh, that's really interesting." And so they'll even modify theirs. So giving a week to develop those sparks. And it's such a beautiful open to our planning session to begin with something that they're captivated around or by. And then, as you said, you only know it's working if you have the data or some type of cognitive engagement from students to show that there's growth. So, what are some common mistakes that you see coaches make when discussing data with teachers?
Yeah, I got a couple thoughts about that. First off, just in terms of the changing idea, what can be changed, what couldn't be changed. What I would say, I would be nervous about using data and not setting a goal that has some of the elements we've identified as essential. So it should be a goal that really matters. We call that a powerful goal. And then we say it should be an easy goal. Now, we're not saying you should have a goal that's not challenging. You've got a classroom full of students. If you're setting a powerful goal, you're going to have that challenge that
Yeah.
people like John Hattie talk about. And then we say it has to really matter to the teacher. and then it has to be pretty clearly articulated. And I guess I don't really like the phrase has to be, but it's going to be really hard for the goal to have an impact if it isn't a student focused goal.
Right.
That's what we found anyway. I started out, I'm going to teach you how to use this strategy, and people would try the strategies for a while and they would fizzle out. And so we shifted to, well, what if we talk about the change in students? And then we've got a much more sustainable implementation. I
Yes.
mean, you can try it if you want, but I'd bet dollars to donuts that if you focus on the strategy, you go back a year later, they're not using the strategy. If you focus on the change in students, people sustain the thing. Then in terms of data, there's just a whole bunch of things. I've got a book, Data Rules, where we go through this, but we say that the data should foster hope. And that means it's probably tied to professional development, because it's not enough to have some kind of data. Like, what do I do with the data?
Right.
So combining the data with professional development is important. It should be gathered frequently, like weekly.
Yeah.
To say, I want the scores to go up by 6 weeks from now, or 2 months from now, or 3 months from now. It's like a GPS. It doesn't tell you if you're on track or off. And odds are you're off track. Odds are it's not working. So you have to be measuring progress. And then, obviously it should be valid, and the teacher and the coach should have a shared understanding of it. It should be based on what research says about data to gather. It should be as easy to gather as possible. And I think all those things are critical elements. The last thing I'd say about this is getting better is a weird thing. I saw this quote today, and I won't have it exactly right. It's a Buddhist quote, but it's like, you are perfect in everything you are and everything you do, and you could be better. And I think that's a great explanation of what happens because I think, I don't know why, if we're programmed for this, but if someone says, let's look at the data, it's like, well, what am I doing wrong?
Yes.
Am I not doing something right? And I think when we say coaching fosters hope, it's to say it helps us be more efficacious, and it helps us do what we really need to do to create a setting where getting better is a cultural norm. To focus on that cultural norm is really critical, so the data can be embraced, not as a negative, but as a thing to go. And so we have very specific kind of curriculum-based measures around engagement or achievement or well-being, where you can see where you are and where you want to get to, and the data shows it builds your efficacy because you can see you're making progress.
Yes. And that is the approach that I find, again, the most powerful with teachers, because when it is that stance of what am I doing wrong, then it's defense. But I also feel like, as a human being, I hate not knowing that I'm progressing and in some way toward whether it's something that is just personal, or something as a teacher or coach. So even if the reality is not perfect, I feel actually it's cathartic to just know, and then have a coach as a thought partner to say, okay, let's roll our sleeves up. Let's figure out how we can get better, because there's no such thing as perfect, as you said. And I think the instructional playbook, what I'm finding is navigating, crafting instructional playbooks with different school districts, different sets of coaches. It is this iterative, ongoing process that we have common topics bubble up in different districts. And I have the privilege of working regionally at times. And so we've decided to create a shared playbook that is actually impacting several districts at once. But what is your advice or recommendation for ensuring that playbooks become continuous?
Yeah, so we would say the purpose of the playbook is to translate knowledge into action. Pfeffer and Sutton in the knowing doing gap, they say that the trouble is we think talking about something is the same as doing it. And so what you do with the playbook is you develop the depth of knowledge you need in order to be able to share those strategies. And then you create communication tools, one-pagers and checklists that help you communicate that clearly. If you can't explain it, they're not going to do it. And
Right.
so you have to be able to explain it. And to create the one-pagers, we start by saying, well, what are the typical kind of goals we expect teachers to be setting here? What's it going to look like? And so coaches should be central, driving the process to say, here's what we've been seeing. Here are the goals. And then you say, okay, well, given where our focus is on particular teaching strategies and other things, what would be the strategies that would help teachers hit those goals?
Yeah.
And maybe the goals aren't complete. You have to add some to it. But what are less than 20 strategies that are highest impact and the likelihood of people hitting those goals? And then you create one pagers, and one pagers, you don't have to do this, but we found the act of creating a one pager forces you to have a deep understanding, and the one pagers become pretty good communication tools because you say, this
They
is
are.
what the research says. This is what the strategy is all about in one sentence. This is how teachers use it. This is how kids use it. And then you create checklists for the different activities for those strategies. So I might have a one pager on cooperative learning, but I might have a checklist on uh, think, pair, share, or jigsaw, or round table, or number line, or whatever it might be. So, so the checklist then doesn't become something that you say, okay, well, God has created this checklist, so you need to do it like this, or you're going to go to hell. You say, let's go through this checklist and see how you want to modify it to make it fit your students, to make it fit the way you teach.
Yeah.
And if the teacher says, I'd like to just brutally ruin this checklist, says, I do it, we do it, you do it thing, can I just do the you do it? I don't like the other parts. And so what I do, when I take the dialogical approach, is I say, well, I wouldn't do it that way. And here's my thinking, but you're going to do what you're going to do. We have a goal. Let's see if you hit the goal. We can try it that way. And if we don't hit the goal, we'll come back and look at it. We have the goal. So the goal, instead of me being the standard of excellence,
Mhm.
it's the changing kids that becomes. So it's more rigorous than just trying to focus on, doing according to what the checklist says. And then as we have those dialogical conversations, teachers will have great ideas.
Mhm.
And they'll say, I really think the kids need to share ideas before they do that next step in the checklist. Let's try it like that.
Yeah.
And as you learn from teachers and learn from students, that knowledge gets shared. So the playbook becomes a living document. It's the place where you store learning about teaching. And you have to guard against making it too big and too complicated and filled
Right.
with diagrams and charts. It's the core strategies, clearly articulated, and then one pagers and checklists.
Yeah.
And it's out. And then you may have something on there as a strategy, and you say, there's something way better. I saw ASCD or Learning Forward. I think we should try this, and let's replace this strategy, and so that it's a living document, continually getting better and better. And then when a new coach comes to school, um, they get handed the playbook, and they
Yeah.
have this document to give them a good sense of where they are.
I think it's one of the most powerful sustainability tools to ensure that coaching initiatives get off the ground with everyone on the same page, pun intended. But also, it's incredibly one of the districts I'm serving. One of the coaches was getting her admin at the same time, and she is now an assistant principal. She's gone. And so, thank goodness we've been working on the instructional playbook. So when they do bring a new coach in, this tool will be created. The other aspect we're finding is that it's been invaluable to bring teachers in on the conversation, as you were just saying. So if our cycle was focused on conferring to inform student growth and student-driven instruction, the teacher has to be constantly a part of the conversation around the checklist and offering feedback. So these are not just created by the coaches, it's that shared input, I would say, too, and that's been powerful.
Well, that'll work out in the coaching cycle too.
Yeah, it's been
I
good.
mean, you could consult students too. Kids
Mhm.
will give you lots of good ideas. I got the idea. I was flying on a plane across the U.S. and I sat beside this person who worked with Microsoft, and she was a trainer. And I said, "Oh, what do you do?" She said, "Well, I go to places. I teach people how to use software." I said, "Well, how do you make sure they know what to do when you leave?" And she said, "Well, we create playbooks." And I was like, "Ooh, that's where it came from." So then I said, "Oh, we got to create those playbooks." That's how the whole idea came to be.
Well, those playbooks are pretty magnificent, and they also help systemic implementation of coaching, that system structure. So let's go to the reality. How can coaches, because we began the conversation here, how can coaches still nudge forward and make progress if the systemic structure isn't there?
I think the systemic structure should be there,
Right.
and hiring coaches without giving administrators a day of professional development or coaching for the leader of the program to support the system. I mean, uh, it's a day. That's quite a bit of time, but it's a small effort in terms of providing support
Yeah.
for coaches. And we're going to invest in a full-time person whose job is professional development. We probably should spend a few days of time spread across the year and making sure that person can flourish. And we have the system in place. So I think the first thing is the Band-Aid, but regardless, here you are, and you're going to do the best that you can with what you do. So what do you do? The second thing is it's that Mad Eye Moody thing of being a coach working with the teacher, but you're also looking at the system. How can we affect the system? And I think if you can come back to the question of what are we trying to accomplish? How are we trying to evaluate it? What are our standards? What's our vision for what coaching should be? And there's a shared understanding, whether it's the 7 success factors or not, there's a shared understanding of these are our standards, these are our rubrics, this is what we're looking at. And then in terms of, and part of that is system support, that the coach actually has time to do coaching. And in the assessment, you should be drawing a direct line between what the coach does and the changes in the students.
Yes.
I mean, you can say the scores went up, so coaching is great, but there's so many variables. What if your team won the NCAA championship the day before the test and everybody's happy? Or, you've got a new principal, or, every group of students is different. So, so I think you want to be really clear on the goals that were set and hit and how it came about. And you can refine the goals to make sure they're more lined up with what the assessment's going to do. But I think the assessment part is really key in terms of what happens. And then how does the coach work within that role?
Yeah.
I think 2 things. One of them is coaching up is the same as coaching a peer. You still work from the partnership perspective. You still don't tell the person what to do. You still ask questions and you listen. You share ideas in a way that honors the capacity of that person to think. And so the whole interaction is one that honors the other person's perspective, not in an ingenuine way, in an authentic way, but you work from a place of saying this person knows a lot, and I want to acknowledge that. At the same time, you're purpose driven. And so by being purpose driven, you can come back to your purpose. You're grounded. And then you really listen to the other person. You work with them instead of like, oh, I know what their problem is. There's a tendency in hierarchies to objectify someone who's not where you are in the hierarchy.
Yes.
So leaders can talk about teachers in objectifying ways. Oh, they don't care about kids. And then teachers can talk about that way about the students. Those kids don't want to learn. But it goes the other way too. Kids can talk in objective ways about teachers, which could be pretty hateful. And teachers can talk about the boss in that way. Hierarchy messes with our ability to see the real person. We start to say, well, what's the boss want? Or you wouldn't believe what we heard today. And you don't really see the person. But I think the partnership approach that we talk about, the 7 partnership principles, it's really about seeing the person, appreciating the person, valuing them, and making sure that their voice is heard, and that you the last thing you do is treat them like an object. You hear the real person and respond to them. And when you're grounded in purpose, that gives you a grounding for courageous conversations about things that are grounded in respect. So I think that's a quick summary of it.
And I think that it is a Band-Aid to say, what if the system's not in place, but it is a reality. So I want to just highlight something you said of before you even consider bringing or beginning a coaching initiative, make sure that the leadership is considering bring the principals together and let them in on this is the expectation, and do some study around the 7 success factors. And so that the roles are defined, there's that clear understanding, and then you're setting the coach up for success. It shouldn't be the coach having to pave that road for themselves, that pathway. There's a quote that I wanted to end the conversation with because it highlights that idea that none of this work is perfect, and that the only way we know we're growing is through making mistakes. So perhaps most important, this book documents the many mistakes we have made and what we've learned from those mistakes as we've developed our understanding of instructional coaching. If you were to read everything I've ever written in order of publication, and you said this, You would undeniably read a chronicle of mistakes and lessons learned. I share mistakes encountered along the way here so that you can avoid making them in your practice. And I love this quote. As Eleanor Roosevelt famously said, learn from the mistakes of others. You can't live long enough to make them all yourself. In that spirit, I hope this guide helps you to make your own mistakes and learn your own lessons. Let's keep the learning going, because when we learn, so do our students. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation.
That sounded pretty good. I can't believe I wrote that.
You did. It was amazing.
Thank you, Olivia. I loved it. It was a great conversation. I hope the first of many, I hope.
Same. Take care.
You too.
Solutions Coaching and Teaching Strategies is created, produced, and edited by me, Olivia Wall. Thank you to my older son, Benjamin, who created the music playing in the background. You can follow and listen to Solutions wherever you get your podcasts, or subscribe to never miss an episode and watch on YouTube. Thank you to my guest, Jim Knight, for sharing 7 essential success factors that effective instructional coaching is built upon. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email at solutionspodcast@gmail.com. Let me know what resonated most from my conversation with Jim. And tune in every Monday for the best research-backed coaching and teaching strategies you can apply right away to better the lives of the children in your care. Stay tuned for my bonus episodes every Friday, where I'll reflect and share connections to what I learned from the guests that week. See you then.